Okay, today I'm going to be showing you how to replace the CV joint on a 98 Lexus ES300. And I'll go into a little more detail as we get through it, but first you're going to just take a little flat screwdriver and just remove the cap over the drive axle nut. And there's a little cotter pin in here that holds the bearing nut lock on. So just get in there with a pair of needle nose pliers and maybe a flat screwdriver or whatever it takes to kind of flatten out the end of the cotter pin. And then once you get that out, you'll need to get your most likely needle nose pliers on the other end of the cotter pin and just kind of wedge it out. Now you'll kind of see the motion I use to get out. You're just kind of bending it out. Now you can take the wheel off to do this. In my opinion, it's easier if you do it here. This little bit of pain right here, which isn't a big deal, saves you a lot of pain later when you try to get this nut off and the tire's already off. So just bear through getting this out. And I'd recommend you get a new one anyway. So if you have to break it to get it out, that's fine. So nothing hard about that really. And then just kind of reach in and the little bearing nut lock should be loose now. If not, kind of tap it with a screwdriver and just pull it out. Then you're probably going to need like a breaker bar, because some of these are pretty tight on there. So we're just going to throw this breaker bar on here, and all you're trying to do is just need to break it loose. We don't have to remove it. So break it loose. This one wasn't too bad at all. Probably could have done that without the breaker bar, but the other side was pretty tough, so didn't want to take any chances. Now we're going to loosen up the lug nuts on here, and I'm not going to make you watch this in real time, so I'll speed it up a little bit. So again, we're removing the passenger CV joint. This is almost the same on the driver's side. This side's a little harder actually. The driver's side's a little easier. Just less steps because the passenger side has an intermediate shaft, and I'll talk about all of that. Now jack it up, get all the lug nuts off and the tire off, and ignore the fact that I know it's not the safest thing in the world. I'm using a scissor jack, and then I've got a ramp underneath there just in case it were to fall, and I'm also going to place a tire underneath the front. I know it's not the safest thing in the world. Just use the video for learning how to get your CV joint out, not my safety record. So then just finish taking off the nut. This is, I would consider this kind of an intermediate difficulty level. So now we're going to take off this splash shield. It's just two number 10 bolts that you're going to pull out. And get the splash shield out. It's going to give you some room to work when it comes to removing the retaining clip and everything. Now, underneath here, you're going to have to take out 3 bolts. The ball joint control arm, these 3 bolts right here. You may be able to use a ratchet to loosen them up. Sometimes these things are really tight and you may need to use the breaker bar again. But really nothing difficult about this. Just break these 3 nuts loose and then remove them. I'll kind of speed it up so you can see. They can be really tight, especially when you're dealing with a vehicle this old. I doubt these have ever been removed. This is an 18-year-old vehicle at this point. And this is pretty same procedure, almost identical on a lot of the different models. The Toyota Camry, Avalon, Solaris. I think it's several different models where this is very, very similar. This is actually really similar on most cars in general. Getting out the CV joint or the drive axle, it's really pretty standard procedure. So this would help you even if you don't have a Lexus or a Camry. So get these 3 out. Again, you can see I had to get the breaker bar out. That one was actually really tight. And then comes a lot of the fun. And by fun, I mean it's not fun at all. So once you get all 3 of these nuts out, go get you like a big screwdriver, a pry bar, or something. You probably can use a screwdriver. I had a little bit of a struggle. So I ended up just working it out. And it just took me a while, but I finally did get them to break loose. And it's not going to fall down much, so you don't have to worry about it dropping 6 inches. That's as far as it goes down. And before we go any further, I recommend you throw some PB penetrant or similar just inside of here, even before you begin trying to remove it. Maybe it's easy, maybe it doesn't need this, but you're not going to hurt anything. And I'm just using a piece of wood and a hammer to tap the drive axle. And really all you're doing is tapping it until you notice that it loosens up and pushes out as far as it'll go. Once it's loose, The rest of this is pretty easy. You can come in here by yourself, and with, in my case, with my left hand, I can pull away, and then with my right hand pull the CV joint, and it comes right out. So that's actually pretty easy. There's really only about one thing that I recommend you have two people to complete. It makes it a lot easier, but even that's not required. I didn't have two people. So now that we got that, I'm going to just kind of show you, go underneath here, and there's a little bolt. So I'm just kind of go underneath the car, follow the CV joint, and there's a center bearing lock bolt. You'll see, so we follow the CV joint underneath, and right here where you get to the intermediate shaft, on the other side, right here, this bolt right here, it's called the center bearing lock bolt. Just remove it, and it's got a little rubber, little piece of rubber on the end of it. Make sure you don't lose that. Now, we got to get the snap ring out. All I used was a pair of pliers. Really, I thought this was going to be really hard, and it wasn't. I used a pair of standard pliers. I put them on the widest setting they would go, and you just have to put the pliers on either side of this snap ring right here where the flashlight is shining, and squeeze, and that snap ring, mine popped right off. Again, I thought, because of how tight the space is, I thought it was going to be a super pain in the butt, and really, not much to it. As soon as I put it on there, it snapped right off. Now, getting it back on, that's a whole nother ball game, but getting it off was easy, which is good when you're dealing with CV joints, because sometimes they make you want to do evil things to people. So once you get the snap ring off, the next step is to get the CV joint out. Now, if you're lucky and you've been living a great life, you may be able to grab the CV joint and just yank on it really hard in a kind of a jerky motion, and maybe it pops out. Maybe. It's highly doubtful. So you're probably going to need to use like a slide hammer, which you'll see a link below to my video on how to use a slide hammer to get it out. And here's the aftermath of that, getting the CV joint. I just don't want to waste your time in case you don't need a slide hammer. So if you do need to know how to use a slide hammer and you don't, then click below, take a look at that video. Now, really, the hardest part of all of this is done. You've gotten the old CV axle out. Easy. Easy peasy from here out. So now I'd go in here with like a steel wire brush, maybe some sandpaper, and just clean out this little ring you see here that's kind of nasty. Clean it out. Make sure it's nice and smooth, and then throw like a little layer of grease in there. I just used a steel wire brush to make sure it was nice and clean, no dirt, and then a nice coating of grease on it. Now, here we are the next day, obviously. Here's my new CV joint. It just slides right in. Actually, sliding it in is pretty easy. Now, you probably won't be able to push hard enough for it to actually snap in, but as far as getting it aligned and getting the splines aligned with your transaxle, that shouldn't be any trouble at all. And basically, reassembling, putting the new CV joint in is pretty much the reverse. So you if you understand what you've done at this point, you can probably stop watching and just go finish the job. So just get this lined up, make sure the splines are lined up in your transaxle and you've got it in as far as you can get it. And maybe if luck's on your side again, it snaps in. Again, I doubt it. So you'll probably need to get a hammer, a little block of wood, make sure you leave the nut on the end, and then line it up as best you could so that it's a straight line, and tap it and you'll feel it pop in there. This is usually pretty easy. Usually getting a CV joint out is the most painful part of your entire day. And mine actually took 2 days because even with the slide hammer, I couldn't get it out on the first day. So I soaked it in PB penetrant. And then the next morning I got up, and on the third pull on the slide hammer, it popped right out. So if you have that kind of time and you get frustrated trying to get the O1 out, maybe take a break, come back, and give it some time. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail. You need to put this ring, your snap ring, back on. You can push it on with your hand, but then you will have to get back in there with the pliers, and you have to get the pliers on both sides of the ring and squeeze it as tight as you can, and then with one hand on the right side and your hand on the pliers on the left, push the snap ring back into place. There's only one place it'll fit, so you really can't put it on wrong. It's got a little groove it slides into, which this was probably, other than getting the CV joint out, this was probably the most difficult part of this, and it wasn't that hard. It probably took me 5 minutes of playing around with the ring. It just kept slipping off the pliers, and if you've ever dealt with these snap rings before, you know how that is. If you have a pair of those snap ring pliers, they make a pair of pliers a lot better than what I have. But eventually you end up with this with the snap ring back on. So if you had a better pair of pliers than I did, it probably would have been easier. Make sure you put this center bearing lock bolt back in place just underneath, and make sure it's still got the little piece of rubber on the end. Now remove the nut. You should be able to basically line up the steering knuckle, get it back in there, get the CV axle lined up. They may have to twist it a little bit so the splines line up. But this shouldn't be too difficult at all and easy for one person to do on their own. And once you get that part done, now the next part is where I recommend maybe you get some help, because you've got to pull down, you've got to get the ball joint and control arm back on. And it's helpful if you have somebody who can have a pry bar on one side while another person kind of helps with the alignment. But I got it with one hand, or with one person by myself, just a little bit more of a pain. Put those that bolt and two nuts back on the bottom. Put your splash shield back on. Again, this is all easy. Getting the CV joint out, again, if you've ever dealt with these, you know that it'll make you lose your religion if you had any to start with. You see a lot of people end up using cutting torches, heating it up, pulleys, a ton of other stuff. So put your drive axle nut back on. Tighten it back up. You probably don't need your breaker bar. Then once you get it tight, you're going to put the bearing nut lock back over it. And you'll need to make sure the bearing nut lock lines, the holes up in it line up with the hole in the CV joint so that you can get the cotter pin back in. Put your cotter pin in. Then reassemble your tire, get your tire back on. And thankfully I've sped this up so you don't have to watch me do really complicated tasks like put lug nuts on. So put your lug nuts back on, and you're not going to see me torque these. If there's anything you should torque, I highly recommend you torque your lug nuts to the right torque. I have actually seen that cause problems before. So once you get your lug nuts tightened back up, then in this case I'm just going to put this little cap back on, just kind of get it lined up, and you pop it with your hand and it should snap right in there. If you haven't broken it, that's about it. I hope this helps. Again, I think this is something that most any mechanic could handle, even if it might be a pain in the end. But I hope this video helps you. If you have any questions, let me know. Happy to help.